You know, when you finally get the courage to set a boundary with someone and then they just choose to ignore it, like you said no, but they heard try harder. That happened to me recently, and it sent me down a spiral of trying to figure out what to do next. That feeling can be so frustrating, right? It can make you feel unheard, disrespected, and like you've done something wrong. If you've ever felt that way, just know you're not alone. Today I wanted to share my experience on what happens after a boundary gets crossed, why it happens, what clicked for me, and some ways that I'm learning to respond in order to protect my own peace. So I recently had a situation where I clearly communicated a boundary and that boundary clearly got crossed on multiple occasions. And when that happened, despite me saying that this is my boundary and if you disrespect it, this is what's going to happen, they chose to disrespect my boundary. My first reaction to this person ignoring my boundary completely was frustration and anger, because I've already experienced disappointment and sadness for so many years leading up to this point that at this point I just felt frustration. And instead of saying anything more, I said, okay, you've crossed my boundary, therefore this is what's going to happen next. And then I went ahead and proceeded with that consequence instead of saying anything else. This is where my therapy really helped me out in the moment too. And something that I shared in my last video too. The light bulb moment for me was accepting that the boundary isn't about controlling someone else's behavior. You can't make anyone do anything, especially if they don't want to do it. You can't force them to understand or change. And sometimes it's not malice. They're not doing it maliciously. They just might not have the capacity to understand what's happening, or they're so stuck in old patterns that they literally can't see what's happening around them. Or maybe, yeah, they might be testing you or being malicious. But at some point, the why becomes less important than the what now. My energy was being wasted in trying to make the other person understand and change, when the real power came from shifting my focus to what I can change, which was my response to the situation. This also ties back to the exercise that I talked about in my last video that our therapist let us do in group with the words that describe love to us. If a person violates and consistently violates the 5 words that describe love to me, then that's a clear signal, regardless of their intent to me, that they've crossed the boundary. So whether or not it was malicious intent or not, they've then crossed the boundary, and it's time to implement a consequence. When somebody actually crosses my boundaries, there's 2 things that I'm going to do. One is to reiterate what my boundary is, and I'm not going to include any emotion, feeling, no justification, or anything like that. So instead of saying, oh, I told you that I don't want to talk about this, you just say, as I said, I won't be discussing this topic. Simple, clear, and to the point. And the second thing is you have to implement the consequence. And that's an action that I do. It's not a punishment for them. This is where you give the boundary the true power. A boundary without a consequence is really just a wish. Consequences aren't really a punishment for them. They're more protection for me. So for example, if the boundary is a phone call and you tell them, I don't want any phone calls after 9, and they proceed to call after 9, you don't pick up the phone call after 9 p.m. After implementing the consequence, it is a good idea to embrace acceptance, because accepting the fact that they might never change is a really big part of setting boundaries, to me at least. For me, upholding the boundary is part of my closure. Breaks the cycle of being dysregulated, trying to get regulated, and then being dysregulated again. It's me choosing to move forward. At the end of the day, your job is to protect your inner peace. They might get mad, they might get upset, but they'll never change. But even when you do all this, you still might feel guilt, sadness, anger, and loss. That's normal. It's tough work. That's where I also lean into some of my other tools that I have like feeling my feelings like we talked about in my last video too, and literally moving that emotion out of my body, maybe through some somatic work or some other ways. And also leaning on trusted support systems like therapists and friends. And remember, this isn't a one and done thing. It's like a muscle that you have to train. Anytime you set that boundary, you're making it stronger. You're strengthening your self-trust also. If you're going through this right now and you're setting boundaries with people in your life, just know it's hard work and it's important work, but you're doing it, and I'm really proud of you. And also remember, you have the power to protect your peace, and it's not selfish, it's necessary for your well-being. If this video resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'd love to hear your experiences with setting boundaries. Please let me know down in the comments. What's one boundary you're really proud of upholding, even when it was tough? Thank you so much for sharing the space with me. Remember, your peace is so precious, and I will see you in my next video. Talk to you then. Bye.